What's up, y'all? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Endurance Physios Podcast. I'm Dr. Will Gonzaba. I'm joined today, as always, by Dr. Sam Rockwater. And today we're talking about recovery programs. Recovery has been such a hot topic in the past 2 years. Everyone is trying to figure out the best ways to optimize their performance, what they can do to give them a cutting edge, or just to feel a little bit better in their day-to-day. So today we're going to talk about what recovery programs are, what our own recovery rituals are, talk about some of the things that are out there that people are doing, and maybe which one of these are worth your time and what you should really be focusing on. So we're super excited to delve into this topic. I think that you guys will all enjoy the content. So with that being said, Sam, what's a recovery program? How would you define that?
Oh, man. Recovery. Everyone's like hot topic right now. Everyone wants to do all the recovery in the world, right?
All the things.
And like it's going to optimize your performance. Yeah, absolutely. Essentially, recovery is anything that you do to the body that's going to essentially help the body heal and recover, in our case, from a hard workout, whether it be cycling, swimming, running, triathlon, that kind of thing, any sort of endurance sport, or for that matter, any sport, anything physical that you're doing. But recovery really is anything that like you're doing to the body to really allow those physiologic healing processes to speed up. And it's not necessarily that you're necessarily speeding it up. You're just kind of helping it and you're eliminating the barriers. And I think that's something that's really important to like hit on right off the bat, is that like your physiology is your physiology. And you know, you can only speed up genetics so much and your physiology so much. Really what you're doing is you're trying to remove some of the barriers and some of the hurdles for your body to try and allow your body to kind of heal, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's well
and
said.
So it's think of it like a highway, right? Like, you know, if you need to get from point A to point B, right? The fastest way is on the highway, right? Versus if you have all these stoplights, you'll get there eventually, right? But it might take you 5-10 more minutes to get to the same amount of time, right? When we start talking about the body, right, it's the same thing. Take professional sports, for example. Take football. Football is a great example of this, right? So American football, essentially those guys, right, they sprain their ankles all the time, unfortunately, but it's just part of the sport, right? They sprain their ankles all the time, and they have a game once a week, right? And we look at it and we're like, it is amazing that they sprained their ankle in the third quarter of last week's game, and now they're playing this week, right? And what you don't see, they're not superhumans by any means, right? Their genetics are very close to you and I and everyone else listening, right? But what you really see is you see that in that athletic training room and in that rehab room and treatment center, they're essentially just trying to eliminate any sort of barrier for the body to heal, right? So, and we'll talk about a lot of the different things, but when we start talking about like recovery, right, like getting like proper protein and proper nutrition, right? They're getting all the modalities in the world. So for those of you that don't know modalities are like ultrasound machines, cupping, taping, dry needling, BFR, blood flow restriction training. They're getting all these different modalities, laser, shockwave, Mark Pro, everything, ultrasound, everything. But they'll try and get all these different things, combine that with some exercise and range of motion and hands-on work. And then magically those football players are able to make it back, right, that next week. And it seems like magic, right? But really what it is those teams are just trying to remove any sort of barriers for that. And I think, you know, that kind of leads into too, like, why would you do the recovery work, right? Like, obviously it allows you to heal faster, right? Which is one of like the big things that we want to do. Again, it's not healing faster. You're removing those stop lights. But it allows you to do harder workouts. So in the endurance world, it essentially allows you to do harder workouts, right? So you're able to stack maybe a few harder workouts on top of each other, which you might not be able to do. It'll allow your muscles to recover faster. So the muscle breakdown. So whenever we go on, say we ride a bike, right, or go out for a long run, right, and the next day we're kind of sore, from a physiology standpoint, essentially what you're doing is you're creating micro trauma and micro tears in that muscle. The recovery process and why we do it is to try and essentially build those bridges back and build them back faster. And that can be from a variety of different things, nutrition and soft tissue and protein and everything else in between. But that also too, like that's another main reason why we do recovery work. Also too, like, it's something that I know me and you have talked about a few times, but also is like time for us to like clear the mind, and like focus our attention on like what's important, right? Like, I know personally, I go out and there are days where I hop on the bike and I have a nice like hard interval session, right? Like lined up, and I go out and I start spinning, and, I'm stressed out from whatever, from the day, or, just tired from the day. And I'm like, there's no way I'm doing this. And I just alter it. Right. And like, I call those, getting my mind right rides.
Right.
And essentially it allows me to like clear my head, get everything out of there, what I think I need. And then, really at the physiologic and neurological level, what you're doing is you're actually just down regulating your central nervous system in recovery, right? Not necessarily on those bike rides, but it's a start, right? If you're in such a fight or flight state where you can't even like calm down, right? And you get on the bike and you just kind of cruise around, and all of a sudden you come back more relaxed, like that is still a down regulation. If you're a runner, right, and you're kind of stressed out from your day, and you just go for a trail run, right, and you have some intervals or strides put in there, and you're like, yeah, no, I'm just gonna go and enjoy, right? And then you come back and you're like, oh, so much better, right? Like that is also like a down regulation of the central nervous system. There's other ways that you can do that too. I know we'll dive a little bit deeper into like what we're doing for recovery, but dry needling is one of my favorite ways to down regulate that central nervous system.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't.
I haven't heard. We can dive into it later if that's the plan.
Yeah. No, that would be good. But what, like, is there anything else that I'm really missing for like why do recovery work?
No. I think the way you framed it is really nice too. I think that you just have to understand, like you said, that you can't really speed up physiology. You can just remove barriers to allow that to happen, which is still an important takeaway, right? Because I think there are probably a lot of barriers that can be put in place very easily that you don't realize could actually be preventing you from recovering properly, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But no, I don't think there's too much that I'd like to add on it. I think that it's important to just consider that going off of your last point is like, it can be as easy as doing like a 15-minute walk, ride, or run, like just something to get out and like clear your mind. I had a big habit last year. I haven't done it so much lately, of just doing like a 15 or 20-minute walk at lunch, and just around our clinic.
Oh, walks at lunch are the best, man.
They're the best, man. It just felt so refreshing.
They're the best. They're absolutely the best.
Going into the afternoon, especially on those really busy days, and that's all you're doing. Like you're down regulating your CNS. You're like flushing out that stress from the morning and just coming in almost as a new person, because you've allowed your nervous system to just chill out. And I think that's also really important to consider that, especially recovery for one, but like if you're also dealing with an injury, people who are more stressed out, like your nervous system is more heightened. So like you're going to be even more present of the pain. So finding time and methods of down regulating or de-stressing becomes even more important in those scenarios. But yeah, I mean, I don't think I can add too much to that, but I am curious to know, I mean, you kind of alluded to the dry needling, and I think that's interesting to hear it used as something to down regulate your nervous system. I don't dry needle personally, not because I have anything against it, but just because I haven't taken the courses yet. So I'm not against it, but I've always thought of it more in terms of, or the way it's been presented to me, as something to like stimulate muscle activation, or, to help with trigger points, things like that, but never as a terms of like down regulating the CNS. So I'm interested to know a little bit more about that. Yeah.
So there's lots of different ways to down regulate the CNS, right? CNS, for those of you that don't know, is what we call the central nervous system, also known as your fight or flight, which you guys may have heard before. But yeah, dry needling, I'll briefly talk on it because I know it's not like the main focus of this topic, but dry needling, for those of you that don't know, is a westernized version, very similar to acupuncture, in the sense that it's the exact same needle. So solid monofilament needle. We're not injecting anything. We're not taking anything out. And essentially you can drop it into muscles, and other points, fascial points and other things like that. And the idea behind like down regulation in that sense is that you're able to put them in what we call fascial points, and like there's a whole recovery protocol that you can go through, that there's multiple points throughout the body where it's really tender, and you can essentially drop a needle down into those points, and what they'll do is then, for example, I have a few athletes who I'm doing this with currently, and essentially I go there once, or I'm treating them once a week or once every other week or whatever, once a month, and essentially what I do is I drop a needle in all of these kind of like different points, and then we just let them sit and chill, and those needles kind of become a little achy, but what it does though is it really kind of calms them down. I would say probably over half the time, I'll drop the needles and then I'll just let them be for like 30 minutes. And I'd say probably half the time when I knock on the door, 30 minutes later, I'm waking them up because, they're in such a heightened state before, and then they get needled, and then all of a sudden, like, they're so calm that they're now falling asleep. And so that's probably one of the best ways that I've found to really kind of help downregulate that central nervous system, from like a modality standpoint. Besides sleep, obviously sleep is great. Like to rest and recover, sleep is awesome. But that's definitely something that I've started to use a lot more for the recovery process, and have had some great success with it. So I would say, Will, you need to get dry needling certified soon, one of these days. And then, you can learn that and try that. And it's been, and maybe next time I see you, we can try that as well. I'll throw some needles in you. But yeah, that's essentially what I've been doing a little bit. Yeah, that's essentially what I've been doing a little bit for dry needling. There's a few other things, but that I've been doing for recovery as well. But like before I get to that, like, well, what are you doing for recovery currently?
Man, I'm kind of an old school guy when it comes to this stuff. I think I try to think of my recovery in terms of, what little habits can I stack within my day that can make a big difference in how I feel tomorrow. And for me, it's everything from the clothes and shoes that I choose to wear, to what I eat. Right. And so we're to kind of go through some of those things is like, when we're fortunate that we work in athletic environments, so we can wear sweatpants and joggers and, clothes that inspire movement throughout the day. We can wear sneakers that have, wide toe boxes and, whatever your personal preference is on that. But as silly as that might sound, like, to me, especially when I was training had ultra marathon training and stuff like that, and I was really putting a lot of miles in, and my feet would be so fatigued. It was like, man, just being in like the right shoe throughout the day would make a huge difference into how fresh my foot felt. Not really the rest of my legs, but my feet would feel going into the next day. So that's,
dude, it makes a huge difference. Huge difference. And especially if you're on your feet all day like we are. Huge difference.
Yeah, right. So, I think, don't underestimate that for sure. And like, don't cheap out, I think, on your shoe wear if you're on your feet all day and you're a runner. So in the clothes that inspire movement, right? So just things that are going to inspire me to maybe, spend a minute or so in a deep squat as I document, or in a half kneel, like kneeling on the floor, like something that'll, I'm not going to feel constricted because I'm wearing my skinny jeans to work. You know what I mean? Like I can move around a little bit. And I think that actually influences a lot of the way you move throughout a day, if you have the clothing that allows you to move freely. And the two things that I think are most basic are your sleep numbers. So how many hours you're sleeping per night. That's not always perfect for me, having two kids and a lot of stuff going on. But I know that I will always feel better the next day the more I sleep, right? Like if I can get 7 hours of sleep or like 6.5, I'm like, dude, I'm a new man. but you stack a couple 5 hours of sleep or less in a row, and I am not,
Love it.
I'm not functioning well. That was me last Thursday through Sunday. It was not pretty, but it happens. But you know, sleep is like one of the foundational things of recovery, right? Like that's when your body synthesizes and rebuilds so much of these fibers that are broken down. And like you need to have that, right? If you're in a deprived state and a stressed state of not sleeping, that's the other thing that your body will go through, right? If you're not sleeping, it's going to feel more stressed and fatigued, and so that's going to be even harder then to downregulate, right? And get those benefits that you were talking about earlier. You know, and I'd say otherwise, like being very mindful of how much protein I'm taking in throughout the day. I'm not a huge like tracking macros numbers person. So I just try to take in a lot. So that's it. So being mindful of that, right? Like, am I having protein filled snacks at lunch and at midday? Do I have a good protein size at breakfast, lunch, and dinner? And that honestly in the past year has made a huge difference to just like my energy level throughout the week and day itself, and just how I feel after those hard sessions on the trainer or out on the track or whatever it might be. So those are that, man. I guess in terms of modalities, like, you know, I love foam rolling. Like it's painful to do, but like, you know, I always feel so much better after I just spend at least a little bit of time doing it.
You're glutton for punishment, Will.
Man, but yeah, but you feel better when it's done. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. It's one of those things where
100%.
You know, I guess it
so
had
good.
its limelight like 8 years ago or so, and has since, you know, fallen to the wayside by some other things. But I think that it just, to me, it's so personal. But you know, for me, like I can get up after that and notice a difference, and I'll feel that difference the next day. It's just your way of like, it's like a poor man's massage therapist. You know what I mean? And so everyone can do this. It's attainable. You can fit in a little bit, goes a long way. So to me, that those are my recovery habits. So just, you know, again, clothes that inspire movement, good sleep, good protein, and then foam rolling, you know, keeping it super simple. That's what I like to do. There's obviously a lot of other practices that are out there. So, you know, I'm curious to know what your take is on some of the things. You know, I'll kind of throw out a few of these modalities that are out there. So here in town, we have this place called Evolve Human Performance Lab, and they have things like, well, they do have foam rollers, but the main things they have are like the cold plunge tubs and the different saunas and Normatex. And I think that's mainly the things that they have. And that's just to name a few, but I think the cold plunging is obviously super popular right now. It's all over the place. So
super popular.
I'm curious to know. So popular, man. I've tried it once and I was just like a mess afterwards. It took me forever to warm up. It did like the opposite. Because I think like
it's supposed to, man. It's you get like super cold for a long time, but but then it's good for you apparently.
You know, I think I didn't dunk my head under, and that's what I went wrong. But I did it a day after my first 50K, and man, like I was just so like tight in there because I was so damn cold that I got out and I felt like everything that was sore just felt worse because I was just like clenching for dear life in there. So maybe don't do it the day after your first ultra. So my only tidbit.
Hey, word for the wise out there. Word for the wise. Don't do your first cold plunge. Yeah. Man, for recovery, I do a lot of different things. I would say, you know, one of the biggest things, especially this year that I'm starting to really kind of take, I don't want to say more seriously, but starting to pay more attention to is nutrition. You know, trying to have like protein filled snacks, like what you mentioned. My current go-to is a hard boiled egg. Just because they're dude, so great. But they're super easy. You know, super quick, super easy. Something to do. I love my nightly dates with Norma. Sorry to my wife Allie. I know I'm sorry, but I do have daily daily dates with Norma.
That's not his wife's name.
No. For those of you that don't know, Norma is Norma Tech, which is a brand name for a pneumatic compression device. Essentially, you have like leg sleeves, and then it's air compression, and so there's different chambers, and essentially it helps to flush your legs out. And so I do have frequent dates with my girl Norma. to try and help with that. I also too recently have been I knew you'd like that one.
I like it.
I also too recently have been doing blood flow restriction for recovery, which is a little bit more of a I don't want to call it a trend, but like there's starting to be a little bit more research about it. For those that don't know, blood flow restriction training is essentially where you take, it's almost like a tourniquet-like device, and you put it high up on your thigh, almost like up into your groin, and then you pump it up. And the idea is that you have partial venous occlusion. So occlusion means essentially compression of. So essentially you have full arterial supply. So the blood flow that's coming from your heart goes down into your legs. And then normally that blood and oxygen gets dropped off of your muscles, and then it goes into your veins, your capillaries, and then into your veins. And then it gets pumped back to your heart. Well, what these cuffs do is essentially they kind of like compress those veins. And so it just makes your body work a little bit harder. A great example of this is if you put these cuffs on and you go and do a squat, just like a body weight squat, it'll feel like as if you're squatting 125, 155 pounds.
It's terrible.
Maybe even more. But I'm not necessarily doing exercise with them though. So more recently, what I've been doing is 5 minutes on, 5 minutes off. So I will put them on my legs. I'll pump them up. I have my own personal set at home. This is not medical advice, by the way. Please be very cautious about using these. Okay. This is not medical advice, but essentially what I'll do is I'll pump them up to 80% limb occlusion, hold that for 5 minutes, and then release it. I've seen some studies that put up to 100% limb occlusion, which is essentially a tourniquet, which means that you're also compressing your arterial flow. And so that is something where you just have to be extremely careful of. I'm not a huge fan of doing that. I think there's more risks than benefits personally. So I normally go to 80%, which has been proven to be very safe. And so I will do that 5 minutes with them inflated, and then I'll deflate them for 5 minutes, and I'll repeat that 5 times. So it's about an hour or so, and I just kind of pump it back and forth. I'll be doing whatever, watching a TV show, doing my notes, whatever.
Can you do much while that's going on?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, the idea is that it's, at the end of the day, I'm just laying in bed and pumping up, and
you're not doing the grass while you're doing
I've gotten it. That's correct. Yeah, not mowing the lawn. But that's another thing too that I've kind of been diving into is blood flow restriction, and that's been actually awesome. I felt really good afterwards. It doesn't quite give you the same feel as when you put on like a Normatec or a compression boot, but it definitely feels pretty good like the next day. I've noticed that my soreness has definitely decreased. So, if I go and do, a hard interval bike session, then the next day feels a little bit better. So that's been awesome. Other things too that, that I've seen from people like infrared light, some saunas, ice bath, which we kind of briefly talked about. Ice bath is actually a stimulus. It is not a recovery device. And actually it does not down regulate your central nervous system. It definitely up regulates it, as we were talking about before, by your story there. But that's definitely been something that I've experimented with more recently. So I live in Arizona. We have a pool. We were lucky enough to have a pool in our backyard. We do not heat the pool because it costs a small fortune, but we also use it as an ice bath in the winter, and I actually love it because right now I think it's 46 degrees in our pool, which is awesome. So it's not a super cold ice bath, but it's cold enough for me, and I'll go in there and I'll essentially ice bath it, and I have really been liking it.
That's cold, man. And my ice bath story, I think the tub was like in the 50s, like the low 50s, I think. They had two. I remember one was in the 40s, I think, and one was in the 50s. I got in the 50s. So if you're getting in the 40s, that's cold, dude. That's cold.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in Minnesota, so, we used to cut holes in the ice and then go jump in them. So,
you're special.
That's a whole nother level. Yeah, built different as
Built
as
different.
the young kids say. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Built different. Yeah. But but no, that's something that we did before. Like, that's the OG ice bath, is we literally cut holes in the lake and see who could, withstand it the most. Probably not, again, not medical advice, not the wisest thing to do. But you're kids and whatever, you figure, you do dumb stuff.
Damn kids.
Damn kids. But yeah, I have limited experience with infrared light, limited experience with sauna as well. But those are, some people say that those have been helpful with recovery. Again, questionable if they're stimulus versus an actual recovery product. Stretching is another thing too, that I try and incorporate quite a bit. But also too, I feel better when I'm just not quite so muscle bound. Cryo chambers. I personally have never tried a cryo chamber. I would love to try one and then learn more about the science behind it. So I can't really talk about that. But you mentioned off air, you mentioned Epsom salt bath.
Oh yeah.
and I feel like you should share that story really quick because it's a pretty good one.
Another ultra marathon mistake. So the Epsom salt bath, I mean, it's kind of like the old school way, right? Of like regulating muscle soreness or improving it after whatever workout or whatever it is. So I did a trail race down here called Sky Island in September. Pretty popular one. And so I did it. And I honestly, it had an ultra distance, but I did not do an ultra distance. It was a 25K, but because it was 25K, like I could go pretty hard on it the entire time. So I do the thing, finish it. And then we're going back to our Airbnb. This is in the middle of West Texas, in Fort Davis. So there's in the town, there's a grocery store and there's one Mexican food restaurant. And that was it. There was nowhere else to eat. So you're not picking up whatever your go-to, like McDonald's or whatever is after a race. There's not that. So we hit up the grocery store, get a frozen pizza, chocolate milk, and go to the Airbnb. And I thought that I was just going to shower off, but I was going to get a towel and I saw that they had some Epsom salt in the cabinet. I was like, cool. I've never taken an Epsom salt bath before. Let me try that out. So I throw it in there, get in the bathtub, and never done.
Why not? Right? Well, why not?
Why not? I mean, nothing bad happened. Except the bathtub was a little small. So I was kind of crammed up in there for, 15 or 20 minutes or whatever. So I got out and same thing. I felt a little bit worse because I was basically in a tight little ball for 20 minutes after exerting myself for 2.5 hours. So, did the Epsom salt do anything? I don't know. Not enough to combat being crammed up in a ball for 20 minutes. So that being said, maybe it works for you. I think the big thing is so much of these recovery practices are individualized, and so I think that from what we have listed, a cold plunge or infrared sauna or cryo chambers, they're certainly not going to hurt you. You know what I mean? They're not gonna damage you. I think that you just have to. I question whether how much. Did they live up to the hype, right? Is it actually aiding you the way it's saying it's going to aid you? If you feel like it is, then great. If that works well in your routine, great. I have no problem with that. And I wouldn't stop any of my clients from doing that. And not knowing the depths of the research on any of these things, I'm not one to say hey, don't do that. It's a total waste of time, because I think at the end of the day, it's not hurting you. If you feel like it helps, go for it. I think for me, I always look at, what are habits that I can sustain, right? And that are going to make me feel better every day. And for me, just where I'm at this phase of my life,
100%.
I can't get anywhere that I can have access to a sauna, a cold plunge. I don't own Normatex, and I don't have a bathtub for an Epsom salt bath. So I can't go do those things regularly, right? At this point in my life. So I just focus on these little things that maybe aren't as sexy, but they make you feel a lot better, right? And I think that they actually create a really good habit for just sustaining a very healthy lifestyle and regulating your stress, not even getting into the performance aspect, but just helping you control stress throughout your days, throughout your weeks. And so I think that that's really what you need to be asking yourself too. Like if you're, don't these things are cool to do, to try, but like also don't forget your basics, right? That's it. And that's the sleep, the protein, the foam rolling, the stretching, the movement throughout the day and not being stationary. Like all of those things are going to help you recover.
Yeah, absolutely. One other thing that I just thought of is like the old school cycling, like recovery modality, soft tissue and some
Soft
massage,
tissue work.
right?
Yeah.
And some people, yeah, some people like a massage, like talk about a great way to downregulate as well, right?
Yeah.
Like how many people, I know my wife for sure, I'm sure your wife probably does the same thing, goes to the spa to go and chill and relax and like comes back and is like, home, right? Like so much better, right? That's like an old school way too, but like, man, that massage, like it works. But yeah, so hopefully everyone today listening got a better idea of like what recovery is, like why you should do it. Like what we essentially just kind of shared what works for us and what we're currently working and doing. Both of us are really busy, so it's more limited. Certainly we could do more. There's tons of different things out there that we mentioned that we just haven't experimented with, but maybe that's something that we find time to experiment with in the future. But wanted to thank everyone for coming on today, for listening, hanging in there. Please like, subscribe. This will be up on our YouTube channel as well. Feel free to also give us any reviews on whatever media platform you're on, whether that's on like the podcast, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify or YouTube. That'd be great. Otherwise, we will see you guys next time.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.